Over the last couple of videos that I've made, I've noticed a bit of a trend. People are not confident in the software tech industry right now. Software engineers, software developers, or anyone in tech really are seeing a lot of layoffs. We're seeing AI come into the fold as well. And people trying to get into the industry for the first time are seeing all this from an outside perspective and understandably it's rocking their confidence a little bit. And they're questioning if they're going down the wrong path and wasting their time effectively. Common trend that I'm seeing a lot. So I want to address that in this video and sort of go over a few of the things that's going on in the industry and talk about sort of what I think of them, what's happening, my opinion, and sort of solutions to that, and if ultimately I think it's even worth trying to get into this industry in the first place. If you don't have any sort of background in it whatsoever. But of course, if you're new to the channel, hello, I'm Stevo. I talk about my journey into tech and things I've experienced, things I've learned, and try to give back to you guys who are trying to get in for the first time. That's effectively what the channel's been about so far. If you like this sort of stuff, and if you want to see more from me, then hit the like button, subscribe, and yeah, hopefully you stick around. And also, thank you for all the support on the recent videos as well. It's been great. I've seen a lot of new people coming in, especially to the video where I talked about me being laid off last year. That in particular has sort of gained a bit of traction, and people are really seeming to enjoy that sort of stuff. So thanks, I guess. I have a job now, by the way. I've had a few people ask me that, but I actually had one before I even made the video. I wanted to make sure that was sort of settled first. But yeah, thank you anyway for the support. So it's good to see. So first of all, reasons that it's tough right now is, well, companies are de-risking right now. Obviously, the economy is not in a good place, as many people are aware at this point, and job markets in general are quite grim at the moment. A lot of companies aren't really hiring anyone, and if they are hiring people, they're looking for experienced people in their fields. This isn't limited to tech, this is across the board really, but we're seeing it in particular with tech, especially as tech is generally affected quite dramatically by the economy. Innovation pushes forward whenever we're in a good economic place, and when we're not in a good economic place, that sort of innovation and desire to push things forward sort of gets reeled back a bit in place of more safe investments and safe things until we get the economy back on track. That's kind of how economic cycles go. And the economy is a cycle as well, I might add as well. We're not always going to be in the exact same situation as we're in just now. Economies sort of rise and fall, right? They go up and they go down. And tech kind of largely follows that, just to a very volatile and dramatic effect sometimes. You know, we've seen things before, like the dot-com bubble and the 2008 financial crash, which have both severely affected tech jobs and things. So it's not the most stable of industries. You know, people coming in don't necessarily know that. I do want you to know that over time it has been proven that it tends to dramatically follow whatever the economy does, and it can often lead to, you know, layoffs in the bad times and tons and tons of jobs in the good times where people are willing to pay anything really for anyone to try and you know, build whatever they're trying to build because they've got tons of money to throw at it. That's kind of what happened in the last few years. And now we're seeing obviously these sort of worse times where companies are starting to sort of skimp and save a little bit and not invest so heavily into new products and new talent, basically. And so that's effectively what's happening, you know, because of the economy, because we're in this sort of lower cycle now where people are starting to save their money and not spend so much. We're now seeing companies starting to de-risk and not invest in new talent and things like that. A lot of this can also kind of relate to AI in a sense, but I'll get into that in a minute. It does affect it in a way, but not necessarily as dramatically as you think. A lot of what happened in, say, like 2021 and things when companies were starting to come out of, you know, the big cough era, is they were heavily investing in new talent and overhiring, essentially, especially these sort of web consultancy sort of type companies. They would hire a lot of people, especially newer people, and just throw money at them and train them up and effectively just force their business to grow exponentially because they had the money to do so at the time. And now that we're seeing these sort of economic hardships, you know, these people are being laid off now because the money's not coming in, the clients aren't buying, and they've got all these people that they need to try and pay a wage to, right? Which doesn't make any economic sense at the moment. So that's why you're not seeing junior roles pop up, or not as much. There's some popping up, at least in the UK market now, but in the last year or so, there's been next to none, in comparison to the last couple of years. Probably going to be that way for a bit, really, until something economically changes. But at this point in time, it's not really going to be the way that people get into the industry just by walking into an entry-level job. Even junior jobs, when they do come up now, they tend to require some amount of experience, right? Which kind of goes against, you know, the name, an entry-level position, right, or a junior position. But it's kind of the way it is, because as I said, companies are trying to de-risk and put safe investments in people. So they're not willing to take that risk and hire someone who might not be, you know, that good at the job, or they might not be able to deliver what they're requiring for that position. So you're getting a lot of senior positions and things, but not so much juniors. But yeah, that's kind of just the way it goes. It doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible at the moment, but it is significantly harder for someone without that experience, for someone without that knowledge and experience that they can sort of present to employers and companies and things to de-risk themselves effectively, to make themselves look like safe investments. People just don't have that. They're a bit of an unknown when they're new to the industry. So companies just simply aren't willing to take that risk. And it's as simple as that. It's never anything personal. Very rarely anything to do with people's backgrounds or anything like that. As such, it's just that lack of experience makes people a bit of an unknown. They could be great at what they do. They could be really talented, but companies just, a lot of companies anyway, just aren't willing to take that risk at the moment. And that's kind of where that comes from. So, yeah, I also mentioned AI has a bit to do with it as well. So I'll go into it. It's not quite the way you think. AI is not taking all the jobs or anything like that. It's certainly not anytime soon. I'll actually go as far to say AI is a bit of a hype product at the moment, to be honest. People are way overhyping the capabilities of AI, at least currently. Yes, it's a useful tool. I use AI every day in my job. It's a great helper for multiple things, where it's, you know, code auto completion, or, you know, if you need just like a small sort of function or algorithm or something that does a thing, it could be great for spitting that out. And the problem with that, though, is you need to know exactly what you want. And yeah, it's getting into the problem of AI now, of it can't do everything for you, right? It's a very good sort of helper, and things like GitHub Copilot, it's in the name, it's a Copilot, right? It's not there to take your job, it's there to assist you in your job. They're very handy tools. Like I said, auto completion and things like that, very handy tools, but they're just not there yet in terms of being able to like completely replace that process, and they're not going to be for a long time. I made another video about AI and why I don't think it's capable of replicating like a software engineer or anyone who has to use sort of problem solving skills or anything like that in their day to day. It's not the best video I've ever done, to be honest. I was actually quite ill when I made it, but anyway, the point still stands. So go watch it by any means. I'll link it below in the description if you want to go have a look. But yeah, in that video I sort of talk about my feelings towards AI and its abilities and things. I'm not saying it might not be capable of doing more impressive stuff in the future. It certainly will as it advances, but it's still very early days, and it's a bit hyped up, to be honest. So that leads into how it affects the job market. A lot of companies that we're seeing pop up just now are AI companies, right? They are built solely on the idea of building a product with AI or with AI assistance or something like that, and or machine learning assistance or whatever. And a lot of these companies are getting heavy investment and things like that because of the AI part, right? They've got AI in the title, they've got AI in the description. It's very much hype around AI. There's a lot of industry investment in AI right now. So any sort of growth you're seeing in the industry right now is purely related to AI. And a lot of people might take that the wrong way. They might see that that's potentially a sign of the end days for software engineers or whatever, right? And that's kind of what we're piling our money into and things like that. It's not quite the case. as I said, it's not nearly as capable as you might think in terms of that. It's definitely going to open up a lot of doors for new products and things. But we need software engineers to build those products at the end of the day. The AI will just assist them in doing so and in building a product that does more impressive stuff. You still need software engineers. You still need testers and QA and things like that. You still need product owners and stakeholders and whatever. You still need a whole business to see that through and carry it to a market and to sell that to consumers who would actually use the product and things like that, and feedback and explain what they like and don't like about the product. And then software engineers can then take those requirements and build on that. It's that whole process still is very much applicable and will always be applicable for the foreseeable, really. AI is just there really to assist in that process. So I've spoken a bit about some of the problems we're seeing in the industry and stuff just now, and why people are struggling to get jobs and things. And it largely comes down to companies de-risking, and obviously AI being a bit of a hype product just now. People are starting to, even companies even are starting to not necessarily invest in junior talent, and juniors themselves are starting to maybe think maybe this isn't quite what I should be doing now. I've missed the boat a little bit. But at the same time, regardless of that, there's still an oversaturation of juniors in the market in comparison to actual job positions that are advertised and available. So because of that, people are still struggling to find roles, to find a job. So some solutions, because I do have some. So solution number one, don't try and tick everyone's boxes, right? So what do I mean? What do I mean by that? You see these job requirements for jobs now, and now especially, they're just filled with stuff that they want. And you sometimes see this stuff referred to as a wish list, right? It's kind of true, right? Especially in this sort of oversaturated market, there will be a ton of competition, and you'll want to try and fulfill as many of those requirements as possible to get a good chance at it. But it's not necessarily the case where you have to know everything on the list. What they're looking for at the end of the day is a good fit, someone with the experience that they want, but also someone who clearly knows the stuff that they know, and can demonstrate that, and can demonstrate good problem solving skills and things like that, and be able to work with people and stuff. And so what I will say is, rather than trying to learn everything that you see on these sort of requirement lists for job listings and stuff, don't do that, right? So what you want to do is basically specialize. Obviously learn the fundamentals. There's a few things you just need to know, right? So if you're learning, say, JavaScript, for example, you need to know how to write JavaScript and HTML, CSS. You need to know a framework, and how to deploy websites and stuff like that. You need to know all the sort of basics, obviously, but beyond that, I would say try and specialize in particular technologies or particular types of industries and things that you are interested in. So, if you want to focus on web dev, then do that, and then focus on a particular language or framework and build specific types of projects. Have a theme, have an interest, right? Have something that kind of makes you. Rather than just ticking a bunch of boxes. You want to specialize and ultimately become an expert at something, whether that's front end or back end related or whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's not a case of there's more jobs doing any particular thing, although there is more jobs doing some particular things, but the point being, you want to work towards the thing that you ultimately want to do, because believe you me, it's very difficult to change later. I've experienced this a little bit. Once you start to go down a certain path, once you start to specialize in particular technologies, you kind of end up getting stuck there. So what I would recommend is you pick the stuff you're passionate about, first of all, and just learn that and be really good at it, because that makes you stand out more. If you specialize in something, you stand out from the crowd for that particular thing. If you're a jack of all trades, if you tick all the boxes and can do everything sort of moderately well, then yeah, so can everyone else, right? So that's kind of all that comes down to. Just get really good at the things you want to get good at. That's sort of number one there. Sounds a bit obvious when I say that, but you'd be surprised by the amount of people who just try to tick all the boxes and learn all the things in these requirements lists to a moderate sort of level, a moderate ability. It's not really helping them, and they're kind of just wasting a bunch of time doing that. Leading into the whole getting a job thing, I did mention that getting an entry-level job or just walking into an entry-level job is not really the way you're going to do things now. As I said, I did mention I do have another video going more into detail about this, but you'll probably get your first job doing other sort of things, potentially even unpaid things, sort of hobby things in your spare time to begin with. Building your own projects and products and stuff that you could even potentially sell as a business and things, that's a good way to get experience under your belt. A lot of people just end up going down that road and not bothering with working for companies. Collaborating with other people as well. I'm going to get a bit more into that because that's very important. And also, working on open source projects and stuff as well. But what I will say, again, another video about that, which I'll link, is with open source, you don't go into that just for the sole purpose of getting a job. You go into that working on stuff you're in particular passionate about and products that you are excited about. And that's more for getting experience with particular technologies, I would say, than anything. It's definitely not for the sole purpose of getting a job, but it does help towards that if you have never had one before. That, and then even some freelancing as well, if you get some sort of experience on your belt with, say, more front-end technologies, say you like making websites and things. There's tons of things like WordPress, for example, used for like brochure websites and stuff, and people advertising their businesses. Those kind of people are always looking for people to set that stuff up for them. Freelancing can be a great way to do that. It's quite easy to learn that stuff, and the hard part there actually is just building the client base up and building trust and people to come to you for that, right? So what you want to do with that is build a sort of portfolio of work that you can sell to people, and ultimately that's a business kind of thing as well. And that's kind of a short summary of some things you can do. But I did mention that one of the most important things is collaborating with people. And if you don't necessarily want to go down the business route or open source or anything like that, just collaborating with people and networking is the most important thing you can do. So if you just want to build some fun projects on the side for fun, do it with someone else. You don't necessarily need to do it yourself. What a lot of these companies like to see is people having worked in teams. People not only having worked in teams and can demonstrate sort of experience with working with people, but also people that can demonstrate their sort of project, working on projects sort of experience and experience of agile methodologies and things, and be able to sort of track their progress using things like, Kanban boards and, estimating their work velocity and stuff like that, sprint burn down, all that kind of stuff. It's all stuff you need to know about in a company working, in sprints and in sort of agile environment. These are all concepts that get thrown around on a day-to-day basis, and it's not all just about knowing to code, right? So start collaborating with people and start sort of employing these sort of agile principles and getting sort of familiar with them, right? Because you can then demonstrate that in the likes of an interview. I've been asked in the past questions about agile and stuff. As a junior especially, you're not expected to know a ton of technical things, and so what a lot of companies will do is they'll gravitate more towards your sort of experience with working with people, working in teams and projects, and they'll ask you about things that about agile and stuff, and they'll ask what's velocity all about? How do you track velocity? Can you explain what a sprint burn down chart is? Can you explain how Kanban boards work? Stuff like that. Like you might get asked that stuff because it's very important knowledge. It's useful to know sort of best practice around that and how to navigate that sort of way of working, because it's very common and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. A lot of companies work that way now, so they expect people to know how to work that way. But you gain a lot of that through collaborating with other people, which you don't necessarily need to be employed somewhere to do. So network, right? So a couple of different ways you can do that. You can, obviously, through LinkedIn, you can just sort of connect with people and people are doing similar stuff. Or if you have been to like a boot camp or a similar style course, you can obviously connect with people that you've met through that, and you can continue to collaborate outside of that. But you'd ultimately do that through LinkedIn, and you can use the tools on LinkedIn to sort of help each other out as well. You can sort of recommend each other, endorse each other and things. it's a bit of a social media platform as well, I guess, in a sense. So you can use that to, post your projects and sort of promote them and talk about things that you've been learning and stuff, and talk back and forward to these people. Recruiters see all this stuff, right? They're on there looking for talent all the time. So, utilize the platform, right? Use LinkedIn. It's a very useful tool. But life isn't perpetually online, right? It's not all about LinkedIn. You can do in-person events and stuff as well, meetups and things. Wherever you're from, I imagine there's some kind of local sort of scene of people trying to get into tech or just the tech industry in general. People of all experience levels quite often like to go to these sort of meetups to talk about programming languages and best practices and various stories about the industries and things like that. There's always tons of stuff like that going on, and just general networking events and meeting people and talking to people. And you might find that you run into a few people that end up down the line help you get a job, or you help them get a job, or you work together on a project or something. You never know, right? It's not networking is far worse than networking, because although nothing might necessarily come from talking to one particular person, it's increasing your chances by exposing yourself to other people, either in the industry or trying to get into the industry. Making yourself known to these people is the best thing you can do, really. You want to make yourself known. Trying to stay in your own little bubble, in your own little lane, and sort of not getting involved is only going to hinder your progress. So network as much as you can, talk to everyone, connect with everyone, collaborate even if you can, and you never know, right? I've mentioned this in a few videos before, but the way I got my first job wouldn't have happened without networking. I actually got my first job effectively through LinkedIn, right? But it wasn't through applying for a role. If you've been around for a while, you might have already heard this story, but if you haven't, this is sort of the end of 2020 at this point. So I was looking for my first job. The market wasn't great for me either at that point. It was probably slightly better than it is now, but it wasn't great because it was still during those times, and companies hadn't quite got back into the hiring rhythm yet. So I wasn't really finding anything in terms of roles to actually apply for that were applicable to me and my skill level. So what I ended up doing was I just started contacting people on LinkedIn effectively, and one person in particular, guy I knew from the company I'd ultimately work for my first role, not tech related at all. At least he wasn't. He was actually in sales, but I knew for a fact this company dealt in web technologies. They were a web marketing agency, and they had a team that did all that stuff. So I'd actually applied to work for them in the past as a salesperson, and ultimately didn't actually even get the job, right? It just wasn't for me at the time, and so didn't get it. But I kept in touch with the guy because we got on fairly well, and I basically just out the blue just messaged him and says, "Hey, remember me? I've went down this path. I've built all these projects. I've learned all this stuff, and I'm looking for a role in web and making stuff as a programmer, as a software engineer, as a web developer, whatever you want to call it. And I was wondering if you and your company are looking for that kind of thing right now, because I know for a fact that that's the kind of work that they do. And if they are, then hit me up, give me a shout, and we'll have a chat." And surely enough, he got back to me. He looked at my stuff and he went, "Yeah, that stuff's really cool." This was only about a year apart as well. So he's looked at all this stuff and went, "Wow, this guy's learned all this stuff in a year," right? Just think of how much you can learn, with us in a short space of time. He obviously adapts quickly and learns quickly. So he was quite enthusiastic about it, and he put all my stuff forward to the person who would ultimately be my boss, and I actually still talk to this day. He's a good friend of mine. He put all my stuff forward to him, showed him everything that I'd done and that I'd sent over, and he was obviously really impressed. We got chatting about a week or so later, and next thing you know, I had the job there. They weren't even hiring at the time either. That's the thing. Like, they weren't even hiring a web developer or anything at the time, but there was internal talks of, we might need someone to do some of the more technical stuff, because a lot of their work at the time was largely just WordPress based. But they had a few sort of requests for more custom apps and bespoke apps from clients and stuff. And as a team of mostly designers and things like that, they didn't really have that capability at the time. So they were thinking about it. They just hadn't really, formally put anything out. And it was the right place at the right time for me. I just happened to show up at the right time and come knocking. So the point of this story is network, basically. Network, you never know, right? You never know what kind of opportunities are going to come up. LinkedIn, in-person events, even open source as well. While I said you don't necessarily go into open source looking for a job, if you get chatting with other collaborators and things, you can collaborate on your own projects with them and stuff. They might work for companies themselves. They might have an opening. They might put you forward for it, right? It's just one of these things that cascades into an opportunity eventually, potentially. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't put yourself out there, you won't get. So to wrap up this slightly longer video than I had imagined originally. Basically, the question of, is it too late to become a software engineer has been asked before. It's not new, and the answer's still the same. No, it's not too late. You can, learn to code, learn to program the same as you could 5-10 years ago. In fact, it's actually easier than ever to pick up the basics, just purely because of the amount of resources out there now. If you're passionate about tech, if you're passionate about learning to code, then, things haven't changed in that sense. Is it hard to get a job right now? Yes, there's no denying that. It is objectively harder to get a job right now, but there's always a way. There's always a way to create your own experience and find your way in, right? There's always a thing, something somewhere that you can do to create opportunities for yourself. And it's maybe not the most obvious path, but I mean, is it ever, right? For most people, people in the past obviously were very lucky with how easy it was just being able to walk into some of these jobs without any experience whatsoever. It's it was an era that has come and gone, and even before that, it was also difficult to get a job in tech. Back in sort of after the .com bubble and things like that, no one was hiring developers then either. As I said at the start of the video, it largely comes and goes in waves with the economy. And it's always been worth it, regardless. So yeah, that's my take on the whole thing. If you have any further concerns, if there's any questions that I haven't asked and answered here about whether software engineering is worth it for any particular reason, if you have anything on your mind that is putting you off the idea, but you're not sure, then leave it in the comments by all means, and hopefully I'll get back to you. I'd love to see, if there's any other sort of apprehensions people have about getting into the industry now. If you like the video, of course, subscribe if you haven't already as well. And I will be back shortly. I've been away for a little bit. I've not made a video for a while, actually. And that's just largely due to sort of, it's been a bit of a whirlwind for me this year. I've had a lot of sort of stuff going on in my own life, which I've had to deal with. So luckily not necessarily job related, but just sort of personal stuff. But yeah, I'm getting to a place now where I can sort of start making videos a bit more often again. So hopefully a bit more of this stuff. And yeah, hopefully you'll see more of me soon. So like I said, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.